number of you, both outside EBMUD and within EBMUD, has been part of this for these years. It's outstanding, and I'll get to that in a minute. Actually, I really want to just keep talking about the coastal stuff. That sounds so cool. I'm a paleontologist. I don't work on dinosaurs. Everybody thinks all paleontologists do dinosaurs, but Dick Hilton's here. You can talk to him about dinosaurs. But I do really, and I say this a lot, I truly have the greatest job ever. I really do. I think about it all the time. And when I talk to folks about it, they think it's because, you get to go to a lot of exotic places, a lot of, traveling around the world, but really you go to a lot of landfills where they've been digging up fossils. That's part of it, and you get to play the cowboy role in camp, and I enjoy that quite a bit. The other part of it is it's my job. I mean, I'm being paid to create ancient worlds, and the theme is looking into the future, but I get to spend my days looking into the past, and it's true time travel. And when I'll talk to groups and they'll ask about such and such age rocks where they are for their communities, and you paint a picture as Greg has set up this beautiful display in there, and there's the painting on the wall, and you can see this magical Noah's Ark scene where all the animals happen to be in there at the same time, and but that has to come from somewhere. I mean, it really has to come from somewhere, and I think what's lost on a lot of folks in my world is the importance of protecting those resources. And so I am a professor at Chico State, and there's some great Chico State connections here.
Woo! Yeah!
Go Nelson!
Wildcats!
And it really is the best school. Just send your kids there. It's great. No, I just derailed my thoughts. Let's see. I forgot where I was going, so I'm just going to take a new track.
Nice.
Because I teach every day. I make it up as I go, and I get derailed. And I've had 4 kids, so derailing happens all the time. So when I was thinking about that this has to come from somewhere, and I have the professor hat I wear, but I have another hat I wear equally, which is doing conservation and working with Michael and people like Michael who are in charge of natural resources. And where this all started was after a boating accident. Greg, as the ranger, went out to deal with it, started recognizing pieces that looked like, to his eye, as a really true naturalist, as petrified wood. Later on, that ramped up into finding some bone, and everything has been done the right way as it should be, which isn't always done that way. And contacted higher ups in the EBMUD. They reached out to ESA, who is the contractor for the resources. They contacted UC Berkeley. Berkeley's like, we don't have time. There's COVID. And so I work for ESA. So they wrote me. I'm like, yeah, I'll go down there tomorrow. I don't care. And you get these calls, and it's like, maybe it's a piece of shirt. I don't know. Maybe it's a bone. It usually isn't anything. And so part of what we do is we look up museum records, and we dive into the literature and try to know we never want to go in blind. We want to know everything. And I did a lot of work before I came down to meet with Greg. And for the whole McComany watershed, there was one fossil tooth of a horse that had been recovered. And that was the only known thing. So, okay, well, I know the rock that it came out of, and down at Turlock Lake, at that reservoir, there was actually quite a bit of work done. And then looking around the rest of this part of California, there just wasn't much. So I didn't have a lot of hope. But I came down to do the right thing, and we did this tour that day. And it was just magical. I'm just getting goosebumps, Greg, thinking. I still remember walking out on the peninsula, and it's like, oh crap, that's a rhino, that's a camel, that's a horse, that's a tortoise, and we're just going down the list. It's like, this is a big find. And what Greg one of the things he was most excited about was this beautiful long piece of petrified wood. And I should have introduced this a little more. These rocks we now know are about 8 million years old, which I'll come back to because I'm supposed to paint this picture with that. But that's a pretty significant time in California history. But we went out to look at this log, and you could see, if you know Greg, he's meticulous and a showman, and he builds things up in the most flattering way. And so we built up the walk so we would end up at the tree, and half of it was missing. And you could just see his heart sink in this. I mean, this is a place he loves. He loves this area dearly. And right about then, a guy on a boat came up fishing, and he's like, "Are you out here, looking for wood?" And we're like, "No, we're just geologists doing stuff." And we both had this instantly, he's like, this has to be protected right now. If people are already looting, and I think the tree had only been exposed for not very long. And so I went back to ESA and said, here's what we did. There's absolute danger of it being looted. We've seen evidence of it. And folks there wrote up a proposal. And this is a key thing beyond the fun stuff with the fossils, to me, is EBMUD immediately said, how much money do you need? What resources do you need to do this right? And I've been doing this work now for a couple decades, and I've always had good relationships. People want to do the right things, but never to the level that EBMUD has done. And it was no questions asked. Here's the proposal, and we did it. We had a crew out here. It was amazing. A lot of you, I remember, were coming out with family to see us that day. And we just said, let's at least dedicate 3 days with a professional crew to get out what we can, and we did. But then Greg keeps finding more and more and more stuff, and it's just been growing and growing. And as a teacher, I'm really used to having like a whiteboard. I'm not much of a PowerPoint person, but I like to draw. And if I were to put one figure up here, I think what I would show is something that Greg had put together at one point for, I think, a board meeting, was all the people, all the researchers whose lives have been impacted by this one farm. It was in the news. Actually, it was in international news. I remember Heather and I getting off a boat and coming from Catalina Island, and it was the BBC wanted to do an interview, and Holly, Greg's wife, had kept track of all the languages and all. So it was beautiful press during COVID, during a time when people were pretty depressed, And so if I had this slide, Jeanette's here, new professor at Stanislaus. It's really just breathed new fire into Dick Hilton and Charles Daly from Sierra College. We've had researchers. I am not an expert in this by any means. In fact, I'm below all three of them. I really am. I study fossil bacteria. So if you want to talk about that, I'm your guy. But I know how to get information to folks. And so we brought in experts on elephants, experts on camels, experts on tapirs, experts on mountain beavers. And that's how this is supposed to work. You protect the resources on the property that you manage, and then you do it right so that the resources, in this case fossil resources, can then go to the experts to really move us forward. So that list of people and members of the California Geological Survey have been involved. I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on. It's truly several dozen researchers. Also, having come out of this in the last few years, at least 2 master's theses I know of have come out of this, numerous undergraduate projects. EBMUD's been really supportive of me bringing students from Chico State. We've stayed out here, and I don't know how Greg gets us to good spots, and I'm not going to ask. We ended up staying in really nice spots, and no charge. So there's that level. I think that's a real important part of the story for you all to know. How much that resource management really does impact far beyond the other thing. But I said at the beginning that really, I really do think I have this greatest job because I get to spin. I mean, I'm being paid to spin stories. Try not to make up too much, but to really build up this past. And I love it. It involves a lot of research. And the reason I love it is because of public engagement. I really do. And so a lot of these bones, all of them, have gone up to Chico State to be prepped. And we've got a really crack crew of professional fossil preparators. And then eventually they'll go to a major research museum like Berkeley, or we've been discussing some other places. But on Fridays at our local Chico museum, there's a glass window like an aquarium. And so we're back there prepping out these fossils. And it's kids, it's grandparents, it's families coming in, and you just see how engaged they are. And I think about the time, this is one talk, but there's been numerous talks that I've done, that Greg has done, that Dick has done, that Jeanette's doing. And so we're spreading this out. And I thought about this the other day when I was trying to think of what the heck I was going to talk about today. But it was, because of the crowd and EBMUD and the board of directors here, it does cost money. It's the right thing to do. I think it's honestly well spent. But how many people would you have to impact? And what I mean by impacting is getting them excited about where they live. We've heard that from a couple of the speakers. This really is beautiful, beautiful land. Or getting them excited about science. I'm not from a science background. I'll tell you later about my family, but it is, Heather's laughing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing that I'm doing what I'm doing. And so if you get one of those kids coming through the museum or one of these public displays, like I could do that too. I can actually be a paleontologist. Maybe they end up doing something, with some other kind of science, but this is what sparked that interest to get focused on school. What's the cost? I mean, how much is it worth investing in the future of California to get people excited? And if so we'd all come up with some number in our head. And then I think, well, then if you get one more person excited by what you're doing, that's a huge bonus. And that's a number I can't put up here or show that, but the amount of people that this research, super supported by EBMUD, has done, not on the research side, but I think of engaging the public and getting people excited to think about what happened 8 million years ago, is going to have huge, huge implications for the future and really supports California. So thank you, EBMUD, for that. I have no idea how long I've talked. I should sit down or you're all mostly I wish my classes were this. Let me finish one. Let me tell you one more thing then, because I'm up here because I was asked to be here. But the reality is there's other folks in this crowd that know a lot more about these fossils than I do. Again, bacteria. I work with NASA. It's super cool. You get the t-shirt. We can talk about that. But focusing on the Macomb area, this is really unique. And somebody asked me this earlier, and if you haven't been in there, do be sure to look at those fossils. It's really dreamlike. I mean, to see them. But the question came up like, well, what is the true significance of this? Well, these are from a geological time period called the Miocene, kind of the middle recent time. And in California specifically, but around the world, this was a strange time when climates that were really, talk about climate change, it was really warm when dinosaurs were romping all over the planet. It stayed warm, and then it started to cool, eventually leading up to the ice ages recently, which is what really created this landscape. But that real shift in California came during the Miocene. And it had to do with bigger climate things. It had to do with the Sierras starting to do what they're doing. It had to do with volcanoes blowing up. But in the fossil record, the way we see this is during that older, warmer time, there were trees everywhere. There were cypress trees that we've talked about, these beautiful ones that they've uncovered in Roseville. And that was a project that was a construction. And if they didn't have rules to say contact, then all of a sudden we wouldn't have these samples in museums to be studied later. But if you would have come to this area, 50 million years ago, 35 million years ago, there were banana trees and cypress trees. It was tropical. And what really struck me, again, and I'm not trying to belittle myself by saying I'm not an expert, I just have a different view, kind of a bigger global view of this age, is digging up these fossils. Camels, which by the way, and I'm just going to say this to y'all because it always blows away folks at the museum, is camels are North American. They didn't skedaddle from North America until pretty recently. And they didn't have humps, and they lived in forests. They were mostly forest animals. And a lot of the animals that were coming up, even if it's just a tooth or one bone and we can identify it, which is why it's so important to protect it, we're seeing this amazing forest ecosystem in addition to the trees. But then we're also getting horses, and we're getting things that clearly want to be out there on grasslands. And so this unique site, it truly is capturing this major climate shift. And we see it in the fossils. We just need the leaves. We need leaves really bad. And so if you're out there and you find leaves, let us know. It's true, because trees are pretty, but all trees look the same. The other thing is at this age, which we now know, which involved, by the way, researchers from UC Davis, University of Arizona, California Geological Survey, were involved in dating these rocks at University of Nevada, Reno. So again, that spreads out. If you look at the map of California, this was my role with ESA. This was a hole, not just because the museum record said it was only one horse tooth, but here's this amazing climate change time, and we know we've got a spot of information from Turlock Lake. We've got amazing information from northern Nevada, some stuff from near Tonopah, a few spots around the Bay Area, but this fills an enormous hole. And so the questions I was getting earlier in the room that Greg set up was like, well, what did we learn from this? I don't know. We're just starting. We really are. And as we bring in, we're doing the groundwork to let the community know what's here. But as folks come in, there's amazing stuff. There's samples in there of a tapir, which is actually my spirit animal. I didn't know that until we found it, and I started looking at it. I mean, it's the cutest thing. You know, it's like, looks like an elephant pig thing. I don't know, it's amazing. And the jaw that Greg had found is probably a new species. It has to be. There's a gopher that's a new species. There's we couldn't bring the really large fossils, which are up at Chico, and you can visit. No, you can't visit. They turned it down. Sorry, they'll be brought here. Are some of these large elephant-like things? Well, they're related to elephants, but they have tusks on the bottom and top, which are pretty amazing. Gomphotheres and mastodons. One of the ones that we got out that was really well preserved. That the experts have come in from Texas, and they don't know what it is. So, you know, what's going to happen this year when the water goes down? We'll find more stuff. And it might spur, you know, new people to excitement. It might spur new master's theses and research theses. But what I'm hoping most of all is it gets this community just more engaged in science. So thank you for your time. And I appreciate very much the offer to come and give a talk.